Welcome to MBAV 6601, which is the course called International Business. This is the PowerPoint lecture video for Chapter 9. We will cover material in the book from Chapter 9, and we will look at some news headlines that relate to our material. I am Dr. Bruton, and it's my pleasure to be with you today. My email address is on the screen if you have any questions for me. If you are now studying Unit 5 or Unit 6, I would suggest that you finish the Unit 2 essay and the Unit 4 assignment if you have not already done so. The Unit 6 assignment is due at the end of Chapter 10. In this presentation, we discuss foreign exchange rates and how they function to make international business work. The length of this presentation will be about 26 minutes from start to finish. The picture on the slide is the Wall Street bronze bull. It's called the charging bull. The statue is actually located in the financial district in New York. It's 11 feet tall and 16 feet long. Bulls are synonymous for a rising stock market, and bears are symbolic of a falling stock market. You will hear business people say that they are bullish or bearish, which tells you in which direction they think the stock market is going. When you go to New York, you can have your picture made with this statue. Let's start off with an interesting historical footnote. Precious metals have been around since 5000 BC. Coined money has been around since 650 BC. The Turks are given credit for that. The gentleman from China on your screen is given credit for paper currency in the 13th century. Here we are only 700 years later, and our societies have just started using digital currency. One of the uses for currency is foreign exchange. Money traders have been with us since 300 BC. If you want to buy something from another country, you will probably have to use their currency. So there is an entire industry based on converting one currency to another. Just like any industry, they have their own jargon, their own procedures and methods to conduct business. There are words you need to be familiar with, procedures and outcomes that you need to know to be able to understand what is going on. So let's move into the world of foreign exchange. The foreign exchange market is sometimes referred to as Forex. For as in foreign and X as in exchange. Sometimes it's called FX or currency markets. Foreign exchange is money denominated in the currency of another nation or group of nations. The market in which such transactions take place is the foreign exchange market. Foreign exchange can be in the form of cash, funds available on credit and debit cards, traveler's checks, bank deposits, or other short-term claims. An exchange rate is the price of a currency, specifically the number of units of one currency that buy 1 unit of another currency. The number can change daily. The foreign exchange market is made up of many different players. The Bank for International Settlements, sometimes called the BIS, is a financial organization centered in Basel, Switzerland. It's owned and controlled by 60 member central banks. That bank, the BIS, monitors the FX market and tries to keep balance between all of the central banks. I will be sharing with you some charts and graphs that I got from the BIS. Let's walk through an example of how foreign exchange works. Let's say you wanted to buy some avocados from Costa Rica. The farmer in Costa Rica wants to be paid in the local currency, the colon. You take your currency, the dong, to a local or regional commercial bank. They act as an intermediary and will put in an order to buy some colon from a money center bank or a central bank. That central bank will reach out to a Costa Rican bank or an American bank that has the currency and make the transaction. Usually there's a small commission or tax for the effort. The United Nations recognizes 180 currencies that are used in 195 countries worldwide. Not every bank keeps an inventory of each of the different currencies. Any given central bank might have 10 to 15 different currencies in their inventory, so they have to find another central bank in the network that has the currency they need. It's all electronic now, so the transaction may take a few minutes. So how is foreign exchange traded? There are several ways that it can be done. Dealers can trade foreign exchange directly with customers. For example, if you are in another country, you can walk into a bank up to the counter and offer to buy some local currency. I did this in China several years back. The bank was across the street from my hotel and I needed some local currency. This is called dealing with the customer directly with a cash transaction. It can be done on the phone if you have an account with a broker. It can be done through your computer, again, if you have a brokerage account. Or a company might have a direct account to a bank. Recently, more than 50% of foreign exchange trading volume was being executed by electronic means. The foreign exchange market has two major segments: the over-the-counter market, which is referred to as the OTC, and the exchange-traded market. The OTC market is composed of commercial banks, investment banks, and other financial institutions. The exchange-traded market is composed of securities exchanges where certain types of foreign exchange instruments, such as futures and options and bonds, are traded. For example, in China, they sell bonds that are payable in dollars. You buy the bond in the Chinese currency, the yuan, and when the bond matures, they pay the proceeds in dollars. You would buy that bond if you thought your domestic currency was getting weak or had high inflation. There are 5 different types of transactions you can do with foreign exchange. On the right side of the slide is a 2019 chart from the BIS that shows how much of each type of transaction makes up of the total. The most common type of transaction is called a swap, a foreign exchange swap. In an FX swap, one currency is traded for another on one date and then swapped back later. For example, you sell dollars now for British pounds with a contract to buy the dollars back for a certain amount of British pounds. In other words, the first leg of the contract is whatever the exchange rate is today, and the second leg of the contract is a price set by the broker. That second leg is called a forward transaction because it's 30 days forward. FX swaps accounted for 49% of all FX transactions in 2019. The second category is called a spot transaction. The spot transactions involve the exchange of currency for delivery in 2 business days after the day the transaction was made. For example, a bank would quote an exchange rate for a transaction on Monday, but delivery would take place on Wednesday. The exchange rate at which the transaction is settled is called the spot rate. Brokers use 2 days as a closing date because it gives them time to get the money in their accounts. Spot transactions accounted for 30% of total transactions in 2019. Outright forward transactions involve the exchange of currency on a future date, beyond 2 business days. It is the single purchase or sale of a currency for future delivery. The rate at which the transaction is settled is the forward rate and is a contract rate between the 2 parties. The forward transaction will be settled at the forward rate, no matter what the actual spot rate is at the time of settlement. These types of transactions accounted for 15% of the total. An example would be, let's say my company needed some Japanese yen in 45 days, and I have US dollars now sitting in my bank account. If I think the yen will appreciate during that time, it will cost me more if I wait. So it would be beneficial to go ahead and contract for it at today's rate. Options are the right but not the obligation to trade foreign currency in the future. They accounted for 5% of all transactions. Both currency swaps and futures contracts represent less than 1% of the total, but let me mention them anyway. Currency swaps deal more with interest-bearing financial instruments such as a bond and involve the exchange of principal and interest payments. A futures contract is similar to a forward transaction, but usually for longer periods of time, maybe 6 months to a year. The main difference is that a forward contract is handled at the OTC exchange, and the futures contract is handled at the exchange traded market. Foreign exchange always involves 2 currencies. The US dollar is the most important currency on the foreign exchange market, and in the latest BIS survey, it was on one side of the currency exchange 88% of the time of all foreign currency transactions worldwide. That's the most of any currency. There are several reasons the US dollar is used so much. It's a reserve currency held by many central banks. It's a transaction currency in many international commodity markets. It's an invoice currency in many contracts. It's an intervention currency employed by monetary authorities in market operations to influence their own exchange rates. Now, notice the currency pairs listed on the right side of the slide. These are the most common. Let me provide a quick description. First, the euro and US dollar combination is nicknamed fiber. It's the world's most traded currency pair, commanding about 24% of all FX transactions in 2019. The euro and the US dollar represent the 2 largest economies in the world, the US economy and the European Union. The nickname fiber comes from the fiber cables linking the United States to Europe. Second, the US dollar and the Japanese yen combination is known as the ninja and is the second most traded currency pair. Japan for the last decade has had low inflation, and the currency is associated with a super low interest rate. Consequently, the yen is often used by carry traders who borrow the yen and invest it into higher yielding currencies. Third, you have the Great Britain pound or pound sterling and the US dollar combination, and that's nicknamed cable due to the undersea cables that used to carry bid and ask quotes across the Atlantic Ocean. The last currency pair on the graph represents a group of emerging market countries. As you can tell, that category is growing because the US dollar is the preferred currency to conduct trading with emerging market economies. This slide shows the geographical distribution of foreign exchange markets. The chart on the left side shows that the UK is the financial center of the universe. Well, maybe not the universe, but the world. There are two reasons for that. First, the largest currency pairs are the US dollar and the euro, and the US dollar and the pound sterling, and the US dollar and the Japanese yen. The best place to get the pound and the euro is in London. The second reason are the operating hours. Look at the chart on the right. Notice that Tokyo in the purple overlaps London by 1 hour in the morning. London overlaps New York by 4 hours in the evening. London gets business from both Tokyo and New York. That convenience gives them an advantage to sell FX transactions. A spot trade, also known as a spot transaction, refers to the purchase or sale of a foreign currency, a financial instrument, or a commodity for instant delivery on a specified spot date. The closing date is usually referred to as T plus 2, meaning the transaction date plus 2 days. Sometimes, for very good customers who are very predictable, it's T plus 1. Rates are quoted by foreign exchange dealers. The bid rate is the price at which the dealer is willing to buy currency. The offer is the price at which the dealer is willing to sell foreign currency. The difference between the bid and the offer rates are the dealer's profit margin. Let's look at an example of how a bid and offer might work. For example, the rate a U.S.-based dealer quoted for 1 pound sterling was $1.29. Now this means the dealer is willing to pay US dollars 1.29 for 1 pound sterling. And it's not on the slide, but the dealer would sell them for $1.31 each. In other words, he's buying low and selling high. In most cases, the brokers take the rates out to 4 decimals. In this example, the dealer quotes the foreign currency as the number of US dollars for 1 unit of that currency. This method of quoting exchange rates is called the direct quote, which is the number of units of the domestic currency for 1 unit of the foreign currency. The other convention for quoting foreign exchange is known as the indirect quote. It is the number of units of the foreign currency for 1 unit of the domestic currency. For example, in the same case, the same U.S. dealer would offer to buy 1 American dollar for 0.77 pounds sterling, and then sell that American dollar for 0.79 pounds sterling. In other words, he's buying low and selling high again. The domestic currency here being the US dollar. As noted earlier, the spot market is for foreign exchange transactions that occur within 2 business days. But in some transactions, a seller extends credit to the buyer for a period longer than that. For example, A Japanese exporter of consumer electronics might sell television sets to a U.S. importer with immediate delivery, but payment due in 30 days. The U.S. importer is obligated to pay in yen in 30 days and may enter into a contract with a currency dealer to deliver the yen at a forward rate, the rate quoted today for future delivery. This is a forward market. Building on what we said earlier, we now can say that the difference between the spot transaction and the forward transaction is referred to either as the discount rate or the forward premium. So, how do companies use foreign exchange to facilitate international trade? Companies enter the foreign exchange market to facilitate their regular business transactions or to speculate. Large companies usually have a treasury department responsible for trading currency and for managing banking relationships to make the trades. From a business standpoint, a company, first of all, trades foreign exchange for exports or imports and the buying or selling of certain goods and services. When Boeing sells the new 787 Dreamliner commercial airplane to TAM Airlines in Brazil, who is the largest airline in South America, it had to be concerned about the currency in which it would be paid and how it would receive payment. In this case, the sale is probably denominated in dollars, so Boeing would not have to worry about the foreign exchange market. However, TAM would have to worry about the market. Where will it come up with the dollars and how will it pay Boeing? Another story that I recently heard is that Air France is buying 60 Airbus A220 airplanes, but they are paying with them with dollars. Now think about that. One European company purchasing airplanes from another European company using US dollars for the transaction. An individual or a company that pays a bill in a domestic setting can pay cash, but checks are typically used, often electronically transmitted. The check is known as a draft or a commercial bill of exchange. A draft is an instrument in which a company directs a bank to make a payment. If the bank makes the payment, the draft would be considered a bank draft. If need be, a letter of credit can be issued by a bank in the domestic country to a bank in the foreign country, saying that the company they represent is good for the money. The letter of credit is only as good as the bank that issues it. For speculation, companies sometimes deal in foreign exchange for profit. This is especially true for some banks and all hedge funds. Sometimes corporate treasury departments see their foreign exchange operations as profit centers, and they also buy and sell foreign exchange with the objective of earning profits. One type of profit-seeking activity is arbitrage, which is the purchase of foreign currency on one market for immediate resale on another market in a different country to profit from the price discrepancy. For example, a dealer might sell US dollars for Swiss francs in the United States. Then the Swiss francs take the Swiss francs and sell them for British pounds, pound sterling in Switzerland. Then take the pound sterling and sell it back for US dollars in the United States with the goal of ending up with more dollars. Now, I know it sounds complicated, but companies actually do that. Look at the headline. Foreign exchange reserves reach new peak. This was dated December of 2019, so it's fairly recent. Each government central bank needs to keep foreign exchange reserves on hand to be able to conduct trade. If a company wants to import a product, they have to buy the currency of the country in which that business is located. Usually, reserve currencies will be in the top 5 to 10 currencies most commonly used. Now, this article went on to say that Vietnam had in 2018, they had $60 billion in foreign reserves, and that business was so good they had to buy another $20 billion in 2019. So that really means an increase in the import and export business. This chapter was a good review of the foreign exchange practices that help to facilitate trade between nations. Next time we start with Chapter 10. Have a good day.